Welcome to another Living With video with Motocross Action, where we test bikes and tell you all we know about them after a full season of riding and racing on them. This is MXA's Dennis Stapleton's bike, our most picky test rider and our most finicky test rider. He knows the ins and outs of it, so let's get him on here now. Talk about all we know about the Honda CRF450 after 200 hours. All right, Dennis, we got a lot of bikes in the barn. Why do you choose the Honda 450?
Grew up riding them. Early 2000s when Honda came out with their first four-stroke. It was the bike to ride from pretty much 2003 to 2008 was the bike that you wanted to be on and ride if you were a privateer. And then I jumped around. I rode Yamahas for a lot of years after that. KTMs, Cowies, whatever Jody out of the barn let me ride. That's pretty much what I rode. I actually got it set up really well, and the motor is really rideable. So I wanted a 450 that I could actually twist the throttle, which is hard to do on a 450. All the bikes are fast. Loretta Lynn's is my go-to event every year. It's not the biggest, fastest track. It's actually kind of slow speed. The Honda worked really well there. So it was kind of my go-to bike, and it was a challenge to set suspension, set things up. I have a lot of friends with aftermarket companies. They make a lot of parts for the Honda, which in return allowed a lot of testing. There's clamps, there's wheels, there's gearing, there's suspension, there's parts that a lot of people don't even realize, like Honda sells an 18 mil shock shaft for their stock shock that comes on the Works Edition. Well, you could buy that whole shock shaft and all that and put that in your shock and make a Works Edition shock. Tried 16 mil, 18 mil. Pretty much there's endless things to test on this bike. It's kind of funny because a lot of people ride over it. Did you get it to work good at Glen Helen? Did you get it to work good here? Really, we just started with a stock motorcycle and ran through every clicker from good to bad to fork height to shock height. This bike likes the shock to be a little high, likes forks to be a little flush. It is a little nervous, but it's always nervous in the same way. So people may not like that feeling, but I get it to do the same thing everywhere I go. If it kicks to the left one lap, it kicks to the left the next lap. So if you kind of predict what you're doing and you know kind of what you're looking for, it's an easy bike to actually adapt to.
So when I said 200 hours, we have more than that on this platform of Honda CRF450. 2023, it saw some minor updates to the intake and the engine, making it a little bit smoother to ride. We put over 100 hours on our stock CRF450 last year and 100 hours on our CRF450 Works Edition. I did quite a few of the hours. Some of our other test riders, they did it. I raced the Thunder Valley National, but you put the majority of those 100 hours on each of those bikes. What was your overall thought process after spending so much time on this platform?
Well, I haven't rode a Honda or put much time on one like that in a lot of years, so I was curious, right? Honda was known growing up. If you want a durable bike, that's what you buy. Right off the bat, I noticed small things. Nuts and bolt quality was good, but could the engine last? That was a big key point, right? We put countless hours on KTMs, and you don't put a clutch in a bike. You check valves, do all kinds of crazy stuff, never have an issue. Could the Honda do that? Last year at 50 hours, we took the bike apart, wanted to check it. Skirt has minimal wear, good carbon burn, no hot spots on the piston, valves were in spec, and that's running 91 Chevron pump gas, standard oil. And a lot of times I run the standard oil on the bike just for clutch feel. It's a petroleum oil that Maxima makes. I run that. And make sure you don't suck any dirt. Make sure you don't run it out of coolant. This thing's proven to be a strong workhorse. The downfall is the clutch. The clutch is a little poppy at the bars. The Achilles heel of the Honda, the downfall, is the judder spring in the clutch. It'll wear a groove in your plate, first metal plate behind, allowing the oil to get dirty. Once the oil gets dirty, if you don't change it regular, you will have a little bit of an issue maybe with some plates or some fading. But once you fix that or figure out the right amount of time from track to track or hours, depending on if you were hard on the bike, not hard on the bike, and you switch the oil, the problem seems to get minimized. But once again, probably the weakest link of this would be the clutch. And I mic the clutches, take them apart, check them every 10 hours, make sure they're good. Sometimes I throw them back in. Sometimes I have to put a whole new clutch stack in the bike. So when I talk about synthetic or petroleum-based oil, the Maxima Premium is what I run. It's cheap. I change the oil a lot. I check the clutch a lot. And if I get far away from the MXA headquarters, I can find this pretty much at any dealer across the country. As I've been to Mammoth, Loretta's, Texas, drive all over the country to ride my dirt bike with my friends. This is an easy source, so I just usually stick to the basic stuff and have no issues with it. Good clutch feel. So Honda brakes. Everybody likes Honda brakes. Everybody goes for Honda brakes. They got a great feel, but the front rotor is really thin, and I tend to bend it quite often, or just overall on the mud. If it's at all, it will drag. As you can kind of see, this rotor's already wearing out. Keeps the pads dragging, wear out pretty fast. If you take the disc cover off, the chances of bending this rotor are quite high, as the thin good feel rotor. Also comes with shorter lifespan of the unit.
So AHM suspension helped us out. I actually used them for the Thunder Valley National last year on our 2023 CRF450 Works Edition. And then Dennis jumped on that same suspension setting that I worked on, that I raced with, and then he's been running that now for the last year. One other big thing I mentioned and I learned while testing with Brandon from AHM is just how important the torque specs are on this bike.
Yeah, for a bike that gives you a lot of feel, that's the Honda. Yeah. The Honda gives you a lot of feel on edges, turns, everything. You know, you don't want to just tighten down your pinch bolts on your fork and collapse the little gap. There's a reason there is a gap there. There's a reason that Honda spends countless hours to put in their book. Torque settings, you know, and running aftermarket clamps, they may have a different torque setting than production cast clamp. So really going over your bike, you know, it sounds stupid, but years ago on the Honda, it was really big if you took out the bolt from the gas tank to give it a little bit more of a feel. Subframe, rear axle, front axle, all these bolts, swing arm pivot bolt, all this stuff makes a huge difference of just getting your baseline motorcycle set up for the feeling you're liking over time.
What about swing arm pivot? Didn't we go a little bit looser on that?
Yeah, so we did a test day where straight line acceleration with a 5% less torque setting was much better, but the faster guys felt that the swing felt bigger. And what I mean by the swing is it felt like the rear tire was coming around at the feet real quick. So the fast guys had to go for a more race feel, a more straight line bump absorption feel. The slower guys could obviously loosen that 5% and not have as big of a swing because they're more straight away and not getting on the gas so early. So they found some comfort, and that was really interesting test to do on this bike.
Also, Ride Engineering triple clamps. These are the 23.5 offset, so that knocks the front end out just 1.5 millimeters from the 22 offset, which is stock. You mentioned you like the feel of the split triple clamps the Ride Engineering has, but I really like just the fact that the offset is a little bit further out. It does give you a longer wheelbase, which does help make this bike a little more stable. And then Brandon at AHM, he has a lot of experience with suspension, and he has a lot of good experience with Hondas as well. He made this thing work well for me. You built off of that, and appreciate, I guess, the extra time that Brandon's spent with us too, right?
Yeah, so you have the shock in a really close range, but I brought the forks up a little bit. It's become a trendy thing nowadays. Everyone that's rode the KTMs for a long time, even the new generation of kids, the forks, they keep getting them taller and taller because they're coming from an air fork. This bike likes a tall fork. The shock was a little down, or a little high, and the fork was a little low at Colorado for you. So we brought the fork up a little bit, balanced it out with there, and then measured back and forth between which track I like the fork height. If it's tacky and good, I can run the fork about 2. If it's dry, slippery, and fast, I run the fork flush. So just a few little details to really get this bike to work well.
Another weird part that Dennis put on here, the Works Connection master cylinder cover for the rear brake back here.
I like to squeeze with my heels a lot in ruts going off jumps, and I just felt it was more connected and allowed my boot to connect to the frame and the Works Connection plate over the master cylinder much easier.
Also, these foot pegs look pretty trick, but they're not just here for looks. These are 5 millimeters back just to lengthen out your distance from the foot peg to the shift lever and to the rear brake. You mentioned the shift lever. How much shorter is it on this bike?
It's almost 7 mil than the KTM. Okay. And it's noticeably shorter than the Yamaha because we've rode the Yamaha a lot lately.
Yeah.
And I just felt like bouncing back and forth between different bikes. It took me a minute to get comfortable to shift this bike. So I figured if I could bring that back without changing a bunch of random stuff, just bring the foot pegs back, you'll get right under the shifter, feel comfortable.
Today, Dennis rode with the stock seat, this red seat here, stock seat foam, kind of harsh, not a lot of foam there, but you normally run these Melrose seat, tall seat foam here. What's the story on that? The tall in-between seat foam is in between a tall and the standard. It gives this bike a lot of comfort, which any comfort you can get out of the Honda is a good thing, especially on harder edge California tracks. The problem with running taller seat is you got to space the handlebars out to match the height that you bring the seat up to. So a couple mil on the seat, you need to bring the bars up a mil or so to even it all out so it has a good Honda platform feel. The problem is if you get too far out of the realm of OEM standard, it's hard to jump back and forth on test bikes. So even though I test a lot of stuff, a lot of times we end up circling back to stock. So the Honda Airbox is kind of unique. It's got an upside down air filter here, which is really nice for changing it, pulling it on and off. You don't have to worry as much about getting dirt inside the intake. Yamaha 450, that's your biggest fear every time you change the air filter because it's got a top-down downdraft intake. Great for making power, not great for maintenance and servicing. Honda, it's not as easy as KTM to find the holes and get the air filter in there, but it is a fairly simple process.
Yeah, I mean, this filter definitely gets dirty real quick. A lot of times I'll go through 2 filters in one day, especially out of Glen Helen. So what's nice is the extra cage is really cheap. So I order an extra cage that goes on the outside of the filter, and the filter wraps around the plastic cage and then slides into the air box. Like Josh said, does pretty good, not dropping dirt into the air boot by the position. But this filter can leak dirt, and you need to pay attention to it by how dirty it gets in your motos. So we're at the bottom of the air box. You had to remove the muffler to get to the Allen, which pops the plastic clip where the black box is on this bike. And as you can see, we rode a mud race this weekend. Lots of mud, lots of water. If you ride muddy events or you ride in a lot of wet, loose dirt, or even a lot of dust, you might want to pull that off, clean out your black box, clean this cover out, save from any further problems you may have. So one other thing about the Honda 450, it's hard to believe that plastic could put a groove in aluminum, but this bike's only got 30 hours on it, and you can see the spots where the number plates are wearing into the aluminum. After multiple hours, we didn't have an issue other than just function look of it, but you could take a piece of grip tape, you could cut it, mold it to where you want it, and then the plastic will rest on there and keep your frame a little cleaner, so when you Scotch Brite it or clean it, there's no grooves in there, and it doesn't look old after a short amount of time. Today, a couple little random things when washing your bike. Electronics. No electronics like to be that wet, so when washing the controller on your bars or your kill switch, the least amount of water you could spray on them will definitely help make all the electronics last longer. Secondly, twin air airbox cover. This thing's a must-have, keeps your airbox fresh. You can spot or see any dirt that could be leaking in your airbox, your air filter, to keep an eye, to keep your engine fresh. The exhaust plug is a must. You don't want water running down in your exhaust. And last but not least, you're gonna use some kind of soap. The foam cannon from Maxima Products is easy, hooks to your power washer. Spray it on, let it sit for a minute. This product's awesome, easy to use, hardly any scrubbing. This is kind of a must-have when you have a power washer and you wanna get the day done. This is it. Overall, the Honda 450 is a great bike. I've raced it around the country. It does like wet conditions better than dry, fast cart conditions. With some fine tuning, you could definitely get this bike set up for you and enjoy it, and the durability's been great.
I love the engine on this thing. That's definitely my favorite part is the engine. Dennis is the guy who's got more time dialing in the chassis and getting comfortable on that. But overall, Honda CRF450, hope you guys learned something in this video, and check out more videos on the MXA YouTube channel to learn more about some new bikes that we've been testing. Thanks for watching this. See you in the next one.